Yes, 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 yes. Welcome to Last Call Reacts. Here we are once again, where I drop a video once a week on a subject that I find intriguing or something that's going on in the news, that kind of stuff. And we've done a few things, and I've been wanting to get to this even since last week. But I waited for some developments or some things to develop over in the news. I believe they have as well. What I'm talking about is the power outage in Gary, Indiana. Now, again, last week, if you saw my last week's video, I did Mississippi Goddamn on the theme of the suspicious deaths surrounding some black youths lately around the area and in the South. And we move up to the so-called North, where things are supposed to be a little bit more progressive, a little bit more easygoing, in terms of the struggle and stuff. But we find out that it is very much not so, you know. Um, Very much like Mississippi and some of the other states, these places are deeply rooted, and I'm talking about Indiana as a whole, as being one of these chapters. It was a big Klan chapter back in the day. And, for people wondering, you got to push race into this. There are certain patterns, certain themes that you see along the way, especially in news and things being so sensitive these days, too, that people need to pay attention to, you know. So things aren't going to be repeated and things don't go unnoticed. I'm doing this mainly for the awareness because still a lot of people don't know, right? A lot of people don't know that Gary, Indiana has been without power over 2 weeks. Now it started over there because of some flash floods. I think a couple days of some very serious rain and storms, and then after that, close to 400,000 people were left without power. Now, we got to give the benefit of the doubt that even though there's emergency plans in place, not everything always goes according to plan. And that's just the way that some things are. But we can't help but notice the disparities back there. You see the mayor, Eddie Melton. But I think he deserves a little bit of blame. The way that the things were handled, but you could only do so much advocating in the system, the state system. One mayor could only do so much advocating for their jurisdiction as well. But anyway, back to Gary, Indiana. They had leading memberships at time under the KKK. So even though people consider the state, it's Midwest, it's really Klan, so economically, education, there's a level of suppression coming from there, and it's often revealed in who are the last people to get any sort of assistance and stuff. Now, I want you to really understand the seriousness of this situation. Over in the background, you see community members working together. Um, I don't know how many of you have been involved in outages and things like that. I have for a few days. And in general, they say it could really take about 3 days for chaos and anarchy to uh, start, right? We've seen it. We've seen it in other places. We could recall back to the Great Outage, 50 million people, I believe, in 2003. We could count to the way and the handling of the Katrina victims as well. Even a little bit on the end of Puerto Rico and how they were dealt with by, your President Trump there too. But with Katrina, when you're poor, you don't have anything, you start cooperating as we did on my block when we didn't have power this one time. I mean, some people had gas appliances, some people had plumbing, some other people didn't. And things were actually good because we had food and drink for at least 3 days. But when you don't have the refrigeration and stuff, the meat starts stinking, the barbecues or the big cookout stop, people start having to hoard shit. You can't get gas out there. Things aren't working the same way. You don't know when help is going to come. you start getting into a dire situation. If you have kids, you got to start hoarding stuff because that is your concern and your responsibility at the time. And if the city's giving you no answers on that kind of stuff, it becomes worrisome. It becomes tribal real quick. When you got to all that nice stuff out the window. Well, now, where you were sharing chicken and burgers and beef and all this stuff, and you're opening the bar and cook at my house, this and that. Now you got to refuse, you know, uh, some of those invitations and concentrate on what you got over there. Over here during Gary, Indiana's trouble that they're into, one of the reasons I don't think it this had no attention. Like I said, a lot of people didn't know this thing was going on until a few people started highlighting it. They found other things important in the media to talk about other than the trouble or giving assistance to this area that was needed to do so. And it's late. This is over 2 weeks now of no resources. People think they're going to do the camp out thing and it's going to be all good, but you're having no access to anything. Plus, it's like 100 degrees out there, really hot. The mayor in the back there, Eddie Melton, says, what that was in the background, which I might show a little bit of it in a little bit, that now there's a plan. He did this, I believe, yesterday or 2 days ago. And I believe he's reminding me a little bit of Mayor Nagin, I believe, who was the mayor of New Orleans back, who was handed off this enormous task of having to deal with everything down there and kind of crumbled, under a lot of the pressures of stuff that he was going through at the time, And and credit there, because you don't really, you plan for the paper shuffle, the things that you got to do, the thing the mayor in New York is doing now, making appearances. He's not really met with a real task yet, so we could see how he responds to a lot of these things and to see if his strategies actually come to fruition. Just let me make sure I have this in the background before I play a little bit.
Really quick, I want to talk about community donations right before I close. We know this, in times of crisis, we see the true heart of people in a community. I want to extend my deepest appreciation to the Hard Rock Casino, to Glenn Robinson, to Denise Williams and Darius Garland and Freddie Gibbs and so many other folks that have made contribution to the recovery efforts, and Keon Henderson and Pastor Braun, Lowe's, Walmart, Amazon, Target, and the Chicago Bears and Airbnb for stepping up to help our residents return back to normal. So if you want to make a donation, please go to gary.gov/storm recovery.
Very important, so we know the legitimate avenues, to go through when we want to, try to assist and stuff. Somebody said it earlier in the video you're watching behind. I just didn't play it because I was talking too much. Think in these situations. So let me see if I could. Did I find it in the background? Let me see something here. A lady talking. Hang on. See if I find it. Gib was in the background talking, just in case I can't find it here, which I think I just did. So a lot of these things are nice, right? A lot of these things help, but they're just helping to cope with the situation. There are other concerns that people in the situation have that we don't even think about on a daily basis or even being in this situation. So here we see in the background, very good, man, people working together. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong or put your comments in the section down there, I think it's not getting a lot of the attention that things normally would, because there's no people shooting on the roofs, they say, or acting up in the Superdome, or people acting uncivilized for some stories and stuff like this. What we're actually seeing is a community coming together doing for self, doing on their own, supporting each other. Good spirits the 2 weeks after.
This event means hope. It means togetherness, and we appreciate all that, the food and the cooking, but we need NIPSCO. We still got to go back to our homes in the black, in the dark, with no electricity, when our basements flooded. We still got to go back. So you feed us for a minute, you give us a little something. We need more than that.
You know, they're not even halfway done with stuff. They haven't even been at the bottom of the mountain to be able to deal with the things that they're going to have to deal with after the so-called assistance comes. You know, beyond this, little food critic that you guys know by the name of Keith Lee has been catching some shit lately. All right, let me see if I don't want the video to be so long. So Keith Lee gave $15K to help Black Gary, Indiana, to help the people most disenfranchised, the ones that seem too far out of reach of getting the supplies or anything they need in relation to their counterparts across the state. So he wanted to bump up. This is what he does. He goes around to these neighborhoods. He's a Black man. God forbid something in the Chinese community, the Russians, the Yugoslavians, Muslims, Christians, this and that. Give money to who they are, to their own people. This is a man that's not stingy, who gives to people regardless of color and whatnot. But he's a Black man with Black kids and a Black wife, seeing his brothers and sisters go through it. You would think there'd be nothing wrong with that, right? You would think there would be nothing wrong with that at all. It sounds reasonable, what I said. I wasn't going to add it, but I remember reading something in this article too. Somebody else had matched. I think it was a football player. Tyrese Halliburton. No, from from NBA, matched that contribution, made it 30,000, and many other people, as you heard the mayor says. And I'm always, money's obviously a good idea for the resources, for everything too, but it's tough to make that money look like progress or relief for the people, because it's obviously been a long time. There's food, all of that stuff. So Keith Lee, as you see there, turns his attention to Gary, and then the critics come in. Well, what about this? What about the other people? Right? That's where the attention went. Not that there was a flood, not that other things, people are destitute, people are in need for all sorts of reasons, trying to see if people are safe, if there's any deaths or anything like that. It came out that this Black influencer, instead of you going to donate your time or money to anything as well, becomes the story rather than, well, what's the money for? Is it even that, And nobody has any right. Don't comment on my goddamn money. All right. Says Lee, who was traveling through the Midwest. So, he liked the communities. He knew what it was about. Began using his enormous social media platform to draw attention to Gary, right? Where a lot of people were not shining any light. Everything going on. And yeah, there's a lot of things going on in the news and stuff. But for how much trash and what people are picking the bones off of, you would think this would be up in the platform. And a couple people did them. I believe Information Man made a video as well, which is very good amongst the short list of people who brought this thing to attention. And you really don't have to, but it helps at least to help people understand, and again, to spread awareness. Keith Lee says, I know this is, in terms of his money, I know this is not turning the power on. And he's discussing what his other planned assistance. So this is just the start for him. He gets involved, not just throwing some cash at it, and what he could do to help to provide supplies, food, and place. People need places to be clean, to eat, and even to cool down as well, as you heard. All right. The effort ultimately became a relief effort at Roosevelt Pavilion in partnership with the Salvation Army, the city of Gary, and other community partners. All right. So, right there, one man's voice, platform, donation, you know, caused a ripple effect for other people to be involved. So it's definitely tried and proved what his intentions were and how it ended up. Now, over here on the page for NIPSCO, I call it, this is the power company. You know, they kept you up to date, what was going on. And every day was a little bit different. Yesterday, they're not putting the numbers up that they did previously before with this. You know, as I said, initially it started to almost 400,000. Then it was down to, you know, about 100,000 now, then maybe 50 or so, and then very concentrated in the city of Gary, Indiana. So now they're saying that it's on for most parts. About three people are estimating maybe between 3 and 10,000 to 30,000 still out there. And a reminder to you, that is just only the beginning, right? There are many things to do to assist and whatnot, but what a difference. What a difference things are. You know, we're not a third, how fast things turn to a third world country real quick, right? They're not showing stuff like this. They're not showing the prayers, the community. If anything needs to be outlined here, it's how Gary has united, come together, and empowered themselves to endure where they've been disenfranchised and forgotten. And yes, it is that. I'm not going back to saying this is segregation, this and that, but this is clearly the effects of, you know, this is like I hate to even use this term in this situation, but to relate it to the situation, this is the pipe bursting, right? Whole bunch of shit wrong in the system, building up to the point where it's almost inevitable that something is going to happen. And you know what? Something did happen. And it brings attention to the disparities that people have to go through in certain communities as well. So you saw where you could donate if you really want to help. You know, don't go for the fake things, or don't just even press a like. If you could, you know, share a couple dollars or something like that, share your support. If you're somewhere near the area, drive through. We saw people giving away bags and stuff. And I know it's a feel good thing, right? You do something involved with food. Well, when's your next meal going to be? You know, because they're not necessarily going to have a next meal that's going to be able to be so easy or planned, or people going to be able to come down where they have to stay in line and hopefully shit don't run out by the time you get to the front. You know, this is a case where we just got to stop moving like this. It's for how much we, and I say we, not you, not me, like that, but America prides itself on this military and this and all the things that you got to do. But when you look back, how are you taking care of your people? What's the education like? What's the communities like? Who do you take care in terms of emergency and response? How do you share? If there's any measure, the barometer of this, how do you share the equity that your state has? Where does it go to, and where it doesn't go to on top of that? And with the pipe bursting, all this stuff gets revealed. So there you go. You have it. You got the information, spreading a little bit more awareness about this, you know, something a little bit more articulate than saying Donald Trump doesn't like black people, like Kanye got up for the fundraiser over there and stated that too. Good job, Kanye. Anyway, man, digging into this, spread information around. If you didn't know before, now you know. Tell somebody else so they would know too, and get some support along their way. Appreciate you guys. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Peace.